Good Friday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Cavs getting ready for a closeout game as they host the Pistons. Rocket Arena tonight, Game 6. Daryl Ryder. His thoughts on the Cavs entering Game 6 tonight against Detroit.
They better not have to go back to Detroit on Sunday, that's for sure, because I don't know that they're winning 2 road games, and I want to give them all their flowers, all their props. I mean, they have flipped this series on its head, considering how this thing started. It was very ugly up in Detroit. The first 2 games, very sloppy. Heck, even the other night it was pretty sloppy with the way they played in some stretches. I posted on X that they really picked a bad time to return to sloppy basketball there early in the fourth quarter. And it started, obviously, in the first quarter as well with the 6 turnovers they had right out of the gate before they kind of tightened things up a little bit. And it's amazing to me how they can magically tighten things up. And I guess that's what drives me nuts, Anthony, is because if you can tighten it up, then why don't you come out with it tightened up? You know what I'm saying? Like, it really, because they're not playing to their potential. So I think they really got to get this thing done tonight.
NBA head coach Mike Fratello. His takeaways so far, the big takeaways from the Cavs-Pistons series, is from 92.3 The Fan.
Somehow, some way, the resiliency of this team, they keep fighting back, and give themselves a chance at the end. And I started looking at the box scores to try and see what's a constant here. And one of the things that jumps out is 4 out of the 5 second halves, Cleveland has outscored Detroit. So what does that mean? Does that mean the adjustments at halftime have made a difference? Does it mean that the Cleveland defense is wearing down Detroit? And I noticed, and I don't know if this was something planned by the Pistons, but Cade Cunningham did not bring the ball down the floor in quarters 1, 2, and 3 of the last game. They let the kid Jenkins bring it down. And my thinking is they were concerned that Cunningham was wearing out, that the full court pressure that Cleveland was putting on was getting to him. And in the second half of games, he wasn't quite as effective as he had been in the first. So by him not bringing it down for 3 quarters, he gets 27 field goal attempts. He makes 13 of them, and he has a 39-point game for them. Now, fourth quarter, they put it back in his hands. Overtime, it was back in his hands. But it's kind of interesting that they took it out for 3 quarters of the game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Cavs deal with Cade Cunningham. Was not a factor late in that game where the Cavs stole the game in Detroit. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst, his thoughts on the Cavs being 1 game away from advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals.
The Cavs have been working towards this moment from the day LeBron left, but really since they traded for Donovan Mitchell. They've been working towards, getting back to this spot. Being a contender on the top stage to be a conference finalist, and they've really had that expectation for the last couple of years, and so they need 1 win to do it. It's on their home court. They're healthy.
Yeah, and if not, it's got to go back to Detroit. Remember, Cavs have only won 1 road playoff game all season. It's 2 series so far. All right, James Harden played a big role in that win in Game 5 for the Cavs. Some up and down play before that in this series. 3-time NBA champion Danny Green, with the impact that Harden has had on the Cavs.
I think James is a great fit for this team if he plays the way we know he's capable of. That's the only issue, right? People have issue with him that his production, his aggressiveness drops in the playoffs. And the biggest thing for me is just, if you just play solid and don't turn the ball over, that'll give your team a plus. Like, I don't expect him to do much at this point. I mean, a lot of people don't. But I think he's a really good fit. As you can see, like, when he's playing well and those other guys thrive, it opens up the floor for Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. They get easy baskets, easy dunks, and he also can score. But he's a great facilitator. He's one of very few guys that will adjust his game from being an elite scorer to an elite point guard passer and be an assistant. So I think he's a great fit and allow Don to be off the ball some and also not exert as much energy.
National NBA analyst from ESPN, Brian Windhorst. His thoughts on Harden and his fit with the Cavs is from ESPN Cleveland.
This is the kind of game, James Harden, as you guys know, has a number of games and have experienced a little bit where he doesn't deliver in the postseason.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
if you're going to get on him when he doesn't deliver, you have to acknowledge when he does.
Right.
And for him to have an 8 of 21 shooting night in a game 5 2-2 and emerge from that with 30 points, that's James Harden. Like, that is who James Harden is. When James Harden goes into the Hall of Fame, it will be as a guy who would manufacture points, whether he was rocking or not.
And he was able to get to the free throw line and get into the lane. Cavs need James Harden to be able to do that. Longtime NBA head coach Mike Fratello. Some things to keep an eye on in this Cavs-Pistons Game 6 tonight.
Which guys for them have stepped up in the playoff series against the Cavaliers? And the three that jump out, Cunningham is like 2.7 points better per game than he was during his regular season scoring. Tobias Harris is 4.9 points better. That's a lot. And the guy that really stands out for them is Paul Reed, who is their third string center, who is plus 4.2 points per game. That's big for a third team. They're giving him a lot of minutes because, I mean, he's averaging 12 points a game against the Cavaliers. He's played very, very well. So those are the guys that jump out at me that we need to be a little more concerned or do a little better job.
Yeah, without question, Paul Reed has given them a lift when he's been on the floor. All right, if the Cavs are going to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they have the Knicks waiting, and New York will have home court in that series, three-time NBA champ Danny Green, with what he feels most important things for the Cavs moving forward in the playoffs this year.
To me, everybody's talking about James Harden. To me, it's Evan Mobley. When he takes his game to another level, because he can affect the game, like, on both sides. You know, like, everybody talks about how important or big Wemby is, right? Evan Mobley can block shots, protect the rim, and also score on the other end and shoot threes too. So, like, he could be just as important to the Cavs as Wemby is. And then when you have a backup like Jarrett Allen who can help him with the rebounding and, you know, protecting the rim, that can control to the whole game. So, yeah, I think they're the ones that kind of dictate the series because, you know, if you outplay Jalen Duren and you also give him a plus, like, you giving your team a huge advantage because Jalen Duren is the guy they relied on throughout most of the season to score and rebound. So, yeah, Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, when they step up, that's when it's curtains. But you said you get plus some Max Strus here and there, Schroeder, and, of course, James and Don do what they do. This series, if they were mature and able to win on the road or play like they play at home on the road, this series should have been over in 5 or 6 games.
Couldn't agree with Danny Green more. Cavs, if they can close it out, will face the Knicks Sunday. If they can't close it out, they got to go back to Detroit for Game 7, which would be Sunday as well. All right, let's turn our attention to the Browns. Andrew Siciliano, Browns play-by-play man, his thoughts on the Browns' 2026 schedule, which was released last night.
The Browns have 5 games against teams that made the playoffs last year. 2 of those 5 are the Steelers.
Okay.
All right. They open with 3 of those 5 games in the first 4 weeks. And the one opponent in the first 4 weeks that wasn't a playoff team a year ago was the 8-9 Buccaneers. And they're a pretty good team, and that's a road game. So everyone will tell you that statistically it's the easiest schedule in the NFL. And remember, guys, strength of schedule is how that's determined, and strength of schedule is based solely on last year's record. Does not take into account the draft or free agency or coaches hired or fired or trades or anything. So statistically, it's the easiest, but you stack 3 of those 5 playoff games in the first month, and you make the other one a trip to Tampa, and they were 8-9 a year ago and certainly a contender. So I don't like that. I don't like 3 out of 4 on the road to close the season, but I do like that nice home stretch there in the middle, and I do like the fact that you're not getting on a plane. I do love the fact, because I was somewhat fearful, anxious, let's put it that way, that we weren't going to get a home primetime game, that we get one, and it's the Steelers, a team that I'm going to say it, owned at home. 7th time in 8 years we play the Steelers in primetime, and we've won the last 3 at home.
We'll have plenty more Browns talk on the other side of the break. Garrett Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show in the Barbershop is up first. We're talking Browns on Sports4CLE. When we return, stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, break
Browns are up first on Sports for CLE. Schedule came out last night. It's official. Browns only one primetime game. Browns beat reporter Daryl Rotter with his thoughts on the Browns only getting one in primetime for 2026.
This schedule does, to your point earlier about the Athletic and some of the national reads on this whole schedule and where the Browns might end up in 2026. Certainly, the NFL told you how they feel about the Cleveland Browns, right? 16 of the 17 games are 1 p.m. kickoffs. Your national television game is a Thursday night in October. However, let's remember, flex scheduling will begin starting in week 5, I should say. So the Browns could play themselves back into another primetime game, but they're going to have to earn that. And so, yeah, this schedule, all the 1 p.m. kickoffs on Sunday, which personally I love, that does tell you that there are very little expectations that the Browns are going to be a factor or a storyline league-wide in 2026.
All right, here is the schedule. It's on the road for the Jaguars and the Bucks, then home for the Panthers. The primetime game is the Steelers. Jets, Ravens, Titans, Steelers, Saints, and then you go into the bye week. You come out of it. Texans in the bye week. Then it's Raiders and Bengals, Falcons, Giants, Ravens, Colts, Bengals. Let's welcome in Garrett Bush, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show in the Barbershop. G. Bush, relative to that, questions at quarterback. You highlight quarterbacks. That's what primetime games are. And the other thing of it is, I don't see that many quarterbacks on the opposite side that scare me a whole lot other than Joe Burrow if he's healthy.
Yeah, look, we always play the schedule game, right? And the schedule game is funny to me because I think schedule games is just more about validation. It's like trying to get the prettiest girl to sign your yearbook, right? You're like, but I really don't know you. So, like, yeah, she was like, I saw you in 6th mod in chemistry class once. But, yeah, I'm a nice person, so I'll sign your yearbook. And then you go show everybody, look, guess who signed my yearbook, man? So look at this, right? The schedule game is like just trying to get out there and do your thing and see. See, I told you people like the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns will be great. You know why? Because they got 3 scheduled games in prime. No, it doesn't work that way. Look, you take a look at the schedule, and I don't even really do the whether or not it's easy or not. Every year is a different year. Every year is a different type of energy. Your year starts off differently if you go 0-2 than if you go 2-0, right? There's different things, ebbs and flows. We don't know who's going to be injured by them. But the cool thing about this is because of flex scheduling, I think Daryl said a very good point. The league is not dumb. The league has already figured out that we need to hedge our bet on basically some of these things. Yeah, we mightn't start and a team that we thought was no good is now all of a sudden a 4-2 or 5-1 squad heading into late October, early November throughout the first, I guess, quarter of the season. And they put different parameters and things in so that they can say, okay, well, how do we capitalize off this? We're going to give them an opportunity to not only say, okay, well, you can play your way into some proceeds or some primetime games if you want. Hey, listen, if you start off great, if you have a quarterback and guys are marketable and guys are nice storylines throughout the National League or in national stories in general, we'll find a way to put you on TV. I think also what it plays a part is, I think if they were to say, all right, if this happened where they said, okay, we're going to go with Shedeur Sanders, young guy. He's going to be the starting quarterback for 26. They'll stamp it. Well, the league will turn around and say, oh, okay, well, look, you got one now. We might throw you another bone right there, throw you another one. Because what they want to see is they want something that's predictable. They don't want to come into this thing with advertisers and trying to get a rating when they don't even know who the quarterback going to be. Like the Browns are in perpetual quarterback competition. It's Deshaun Watson, it's Shedeur Sanders, it's Dylan Gabriel's name keep getting thrown around as well. If you don't have a quarterback that you settled on, then we can't give you the top-notch games. We're not gonna put a billing together and put you in a situation where it may be a nasty football game because you're rotating quarterbacks. So and then to your point, this is the major point. I'm looking at that schedule. I don't see nobody on there that scares me like that. There's no world beaters on there. I didn't see many Dan Marinos and Montanas and Aikmans on that list. I mean, this is why there's a lot of people, and I'm telling you, slowly but surely, we talked about it before. I heard Daryl. I was listening to his radio show. He said, I mean, they might be able to get 8 wins. Mary Kay was on UCSS. Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I asked her, I said, what the record looking like, Mary Kay? She said the Browns might get 8 to 10. Now, people tell me, now I'm the Kool-Aid drinker. I drink all the Kool-Aid. I amp the Browns up all the time. Kool-Aid Mafia, stand up. But I'm telling you, slowly but surely, when you look at these rosters, you look at the schedule, you look at the 2 draft classes, if you can get serviceable quarterback play with this defense, you're telling me you can't squint and see 8 wins with this schedule. Now, they got to go do it, but I'm encouraged by what it looked like on paper.
Yeah, no, I can't argue with you. You know, and the question, the other thing is you got 3 new head coaches in the division. So, I said Joe Burrow. I should have said Lamar Jackson if he is the Lamar Jackson that's healthy. Those are the 2 guys. You know, the best quarterbacks that you're going to face are in the division. You're going to face them anyway. This is kind of interesting. This is from ESPN. Biggest questions for second-year players, and they have a Brown in there. It's Harold Fannin. What is the ceiling for Harold Fannin? No doubt Todd Monken got good quarterback play out of 2 tight ends, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely in Baltimore. Over his 5 years in the NFL as an offensive coordinator, most productive tight end was Fannin, 55 catches, 673 yards. Fannin was Andrews. Fannin outproduced that in year 1. Andrews splitting time with Likely. It's fair to assume Fannin might consolidate production in a way Andrews never did for Monken. The other thing that you have to take into account is you had Lamar Jackson, you had Derrick Henry. Todd Monken is going to find a matchup, and he's going to exploit it until the defense stops it. That's kind of what good offensive coaches do. So if they can't cover Fannin, he's going to keep feeding Fannin.
I love what they did, too. They did what I call, they did a good job of buddy blocking. What does that mean, man? You know, you got guys out there, and there's one dude that's hanging out, and another dude is always competing with you. He's always competing for the same jobs, compete for the same shoes, want to talk to the same girl, and you cancel each other out. But what the Browns did is say, oh, no. Here's what we're going to do. We got Harold Fannin Jr. We feel like he's a nightmare walking. He catches the ball in the flats. He's one of the most difficult people to bring down in open field. He's a brute. He can catch back shoulder fades. He is an actual weapon at the tight end position. He's not a tight end. He's a weapon. He is Weapon X. And so what they're going to do is we're going to take some of that tight end stuff off your plate, right? Some of the run plays and the double teams and the zones and keeping in to help the left tackle because he's going against Max Crosby or a rush-in or some of the things, the dirty work. If you look at what they brought in and brought back in terms of signing guys that was on the roster last year, free agency, and then what they did in the draft, they got like 7, 8 tight ends. They got 7 or 8, and those guys are going to help do the dirty work. And what Harold Fannin Jr. is going to be able to do is be playmaker, Weapon X. And I think the thing that Todd Monken is seeing, and now it's so crazy, and there's the reason why I'm so excited to see this offense. Now, Quinshon Judkins is already unbelievably difficult to bring down in space. Harold Fannin Jr. is very physical and tough to bring down. Now you add a guy like Casey Concepcion, who is a speed guy. Now we have some of the same things that we can do that other teams were doing. How we used to always get killed by Zay Flowers, just catching the ball 5 yards and taking it 16, catching the football and being able to have a run after catch. Now we got one of those guys. We also have another target in the red zone who should be able to go and get the ball in Denzel Boston, right? So now you see all of those other weapons, all of those other pieces and parts help the guy we're talking about right here. Because now we can get guys in open space, we can get guys in places, and we don't need to be perfect. If it's 3rd and 9, maybe you can throw it 3rd and 6 and tell them to get you 3 yards. That's what's on the table right now for the Cleveland Browns offense. And when you can do that, it raises the floor of your quarterback because they don't have to have pinpoint accuracy. The catch radius isn't very small, and they don't have to put the ball on people to make spectacular catches contested when you got guys that can help you do some of the simple things on their own.
All right, Josh Norris, Director of Content for Underdog Sports, what he likes and why he's so high on Denzel Boston.
He just plays to size, 6'4 plus, and just these defenders would bounce off of him. And I think a lot of people, because of that size, will say, well, you can just line him at X, and he can be a sacrificial player at times and, alter coverage and take the best outside corner and all that. He gets a couple high-point catches here or there and all that. When in reality, at Washington, they built the passing attack around him. They would move him inside. They would move him outside. So I actually think he and Concepcion, despite being somewhat different, builds, they can be, utilized in tandem, in stacks, in motion. You can line up Boston on the inside and work in that coverage and in that department. And while it might not be the most aesthetically pleasing mover out there like Concepcion is, I just think Denzel Boston knows the areas where he wins, and he will dunk on you once you get to the red zone. And he works these intermediate routes. He works inside breakers too. And I really do think that those are the areas where Todd Monken is going to be at his best, is sucking people in play action, work over the middle to both Casey Concepcion, who can win after the catch, and also Denzel Boston into those tight window targets.
So, G-Bush, I thought he moved pretty well, just watching the big body kind of move and run routes. You put him out at X, and you're creating space for Harold Fannin and Casey Concepcion and Jerry Jeudy, because you can't cheat off of the guy.
You can't. Listen, you now put yourself where everybody going to play you straight up. And, as the offseason goes, I'm a little bit of a football junkie. I go back and watch these games, and I go watch the All-22. And I was watching just the other day. I was watching the All-22, and I believe it was the last game of the year. Oh, no, it was against the Buffalo Bills. And you just watch how the Buffalo Bills played the Cleveland Browns defensively. The Browns line was so bad that they had to keep tight ends in to just pass protect. And then that let the cornerbacks and the defensive backs in the secondary be able to just look completely at the wide receivers. And then the wide receivers and Jerry Jeudy and Malachi Corley, there were no deep routes. There was no separation. There was none of that. Like it was one of those things where it was like, you had to keep tight ends in. You had to make them block. You had to do certain things just to make the offense viable, to snap the ball and give yourself a chance to just put a couple of people in the routes. And I looked at that and said, man, what a difference a day makes. What a difference a couple of months makes. Because now you take a look at that, and as you pointed out, you can't do any of that. You can't sit there and load up on guys up on a line of scrimmage. Sometimes the Cleveland Browns wanted to bring out two tight ends so that the defense would go to nickel coverage. Sometimes they would just come out and base. Like, think about that. They would come out and base three linebackers, and because they felt that the Browns could not victimize their three linebackers in coverage. So even if you did try to come out and fool them and say, okay, well, we're going to come out in this, and you're going to have to go to nickel, and now we can run the ball. They were like, no. You can't run the ball because we're in base, and we're going to keep three linebackers in the game because we're still in base, and you can't victimize us in a passing game. That is all different now. Now you look at what Denzel Boston can do, and he is, he was astute in saying this. He's just not a run-trick pony. Like, don't act like that he's a dude out to the outside that's just going to catch a back shoulder fades or jump balls, 50-50 passes in the end zone. He can run the intermediate route. He can win on the outside. They moved him around Washington to the slot. If you watch Washington and Polk and Dunze and some of the receivers that they've had, those guys in Washington, Kalen DeBoer, when he was there, they run all the route tree. So it's not going to be one of them things. Casey Concepcion can run the entire route tree. So when you add those things up, stacks, releases, motions, the guys you already have, Harold Fannin Jr., you already got Quinshawn Junkins. These are things that are going to be very difficult for the Cleveland people to stop the Cleveland Browns. And guess what, too? They still got defense. We ain't even talked about E-Man yet. Like, they just got we haven't even talked. That man could be a starter, and we got him on a humbug. I don't even know how we did it. I can't wait to the preseason. I need to see some preseason games. I need to see it now.
G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out of the side of the break. We'll continue talking Browns, talk a little bit about the quarterback competition. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Garrett Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show and the Barber Shop. This is an NFL executive prediction story that ESPN did. They predict 2027 offseason. Deshaun Watson becomes quite the interesting free agent. Watson's a viable option to start for Cleveland this season if Coach Todd Monken opts for a veteran experience. Browns made several improvements to the offense around the quarterback. If Watson can regain his confidence and stay in the lineup, might be a chance for him to start somewhere in 2027. QB is 30 years old. Main thing is showing that he can stay healthy. That's an AFC executive. G. Bush, they're pretty significant injuries he's trying to come back from. You know, the shoulder that was put together, 2 Achilles. I'm not saying he can't do it. It's an uphill battle, and we're not going to know until you start taking contact from other teams even.
That's the thing that I think people are underestimating. Now, it just so happens that, you know, I've torn my Achilles heel before. I've torn my ACL in my left knee, ACL in my right knee, torn my PCL. I've had neck surgery, back surgery. I've had a lot of surgery. So when it comes to surgeries, I kind of know a thing or two. And the thing I'm going to tell you about the Achilles heels and injuries is once you start having these lower body injuries, I just want to let everybody know what you're doing is you're rehabbing to get back to base level. What does that mean? You're rehabbing to get back to where you were, bare minimum. There is no improvement. There is no, hey, I'm trying to, you know, improve my lateral quickness. Hey, I'm trying to improve my functional strength in my lower body. Hey, I'm trying to improve my arm angles and the capabilities of throwing the football. You're not doing that. You're getting back to base level. And the thing that really happens when you talk about injuries and they're compounded on your age is everybody ages different. Now, if you think about Deshaun Watson had injuries coming out of Clemson. He had injuries when he was with the Texans. He's already torn his ACL as well. The thing that really worked well for Deshaun Watson was his mobility, his escapability, and his arm. So now you take a look and you say, hey, well, he's taking a lot of injuries to his lower body, right? Say he's not as fast or quick or mobile as he used to be. When last time we saw him, he didn't have the control in his arm. You know, he didn't have the control that he wanted to. There was a lot of throws where guys could be open and the ball sailed on him. Those are all things that come with the injuries compounded with the time. Now, here's the big part, and you just said it. You're not going to know what somebody can or cannot do until you put them in a position where it is live. That is where you will find out which quarterback is getting it done. You won't find out with shorts. Let me just tell you why. Because with shorts, there are certain quarterbacks that if you put them out there and you put them in one versus the other, I go back. I'm old enough to remember. Back in the day when Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning came out. Now, a lot of you guys don't remember this, but when Ryan Leaf came out of Washington State, let me tell you something. Ryan Leaf was big, strong, powerful. He had a howitzer. He would put the ball. He would throw the ball and you would hear it spinning. See, it's a lot. People don't understand. There's quarterback that when they throw it, the revolutions, you can hear it. And then you take a look at Peyton Manning coming out of Tennessee. Kind of clunky. You know, they used to call him He had a little loosey-goosey, and his motion wasn't all the way together. And when he ain't as pretty when he's standing in the pocket. He's kind of, finicky. He's not going to run nowhere. But when you looked at it on paper and you looked at it in shorts, there was a lot of people that got fired because they said Ryan Leaf was it. And then you already know what Peyton Manning was. That's the problem. Until you get somebody out there that can check, that understands on the fly, the bullets is flying, people is coming, you need to escape, you need to figure, you keep your eyes downfield, and then be accurate. That's where you find who the quarterback is. Not because right now, Deshaun Watson, one of the prettiest looking quarterbacks in the game. When you see him out there in practice, he got the shield, the visor, the spat, the orange spat, everything. He looked like a creative player off Madden, and he throw the ball well. So when you look at him, it's always going to look at a situation and saying to yourself, hey, Deshaun looking good right now. But I want to see Deshaun look good when it's in August. That's what I want to see.
All right, G. Bush, you had a special edition of the Barbershop with Deion Primetime Sanders. We're going to show a clip about you asking him about Shedeur.
I think a lot of people in Cleveland are still trying to separate the headlines and the social media image from who Shedeur is exactly as a man and a teammate. So a lot of people see the confidence. They see the jewelry. They see the spotlight.
Why wouldn't you see that? You were birthed from that. Like, this is what we do. It's not that we're trying to show out a showboat. This is how it was. Like, if you pull up videos when he was 12 and 10, it was that. Like, that's where we come from. That's how he was exposed, and that's what it was for him. So that was like a badge of honor when he could rope up or chain up or link up. Then he turned to gold to diamonds. Like that, that's where we come from, man. So you can't fault a man for understanding where he came from. And that was the come up. That in our neighborhood, in our inner city, see, you getting caught up in thinking how he grew up. He didn't grow up with no silver spoon. He didn't grow up with no credit cards. I took him to the other side of town, man. He grew up in South Dallas. Yeah, he grew up playing ball against us. like he and Shiloh and my daughter. Ballsy played quarterback too. So we grew up on the other side. I took them to the other side so they could have that ingredient in them. When times got rough like they did, they would know how to respond.
So, G. Bush, again, you had I encourage people, go watch it's on Barbershop. You can find it on YouTube. Biggest takeaway and you had him for a while, biggest takeaway from your conversations with Deion?
I think when my biggest takeaway is he came off for the first time, seeing it from afar. He came off as a father. One of the things that I came away with thinking was this was the most impactful thing he said. He said, when the slide was happening and I couldn't. Usually I was able to help him. I was able to be able to be a father to fix things for my children like any father would want to. And at that point in time, he needed my help, but there was nothing I can do with it. It was the first time I had felt like I had lost control of the situation. And we sat there and he said to see, your son go through something like that and not be able to help him was very difficult for him as a father. And I thought the thing that he told me and talked about, I thought he came off as very candid. I think he came out as vulnerable in telling his side of, some of the things that went down. But the most impactful thing that I do think he said was, I asked him about what's something that people have a misconception about Shedeur and something that maybe people don't know. And he brought up something, I don't think he told anybody else this. And he said, there was a kid, a young man that played for the University of Colorado. And he passed away, and they had the procession and everything about a month ago. And unbeknownst to Coach Prime, Shedeur had reached out to this young man's mother, and he had contacted her, and he said he calls her every single day. And Coach Prime didn't know about this till a few days ago, because the mother of one of his deceased player, she told Coach Prime, he was like, that's so nice that Shedeur, he calls me every day to check on me. And Coach Prime didn't know anything about it. He said, I never knew. He said, he never tells me. He just does things. And he said, he has a good heart. He's a really good person. And I think that was one of the things that shined through the most. And I also thought that, he said that he is very fond of Andrew Barrett and Jimmy Haslam because there's a perception that he is moving around and doing a lot of different things. I asked him point blank. People think, hey, you Coach Prime, you move around a little bit. He said, listen, I'm going to be forever indebted and thankful for Andrew Barrett and Jimmy Haslam for giving my son an opportunity when a lot of other people didn't. So I thought that was stand up about him. I thought he was poignant. I thought that was a stand up thing to say. And I thank him all the time and thank him for coming on the barbershop and giving me an opportunity to do the interview. So, I think those are the things that stand out. And on top of it, he's ready for the competition.
Yeah.
So the competition is going to be ready to go. And I think he actually has some nice things to say about Deshaun Watson as well. So it's going to be exciting summer, and you guys go check out the interview on the barbershop.
Sounds good. Appreciate the time, as always. Great stuff. And I'm with you. I thought he sounded like a dad. And it was really interesting to hear him. And you know what? Go win the job. And you know what? The Browns. He goes. If Stuart Sanders goes, and I've been saying this, and you've agreed. If he wins that job and plays well, that solves a lot of the Browns' problems for the foreseeable future.
There you go. Solves a lot of them.
Appreciate you. Have a good one, G. Bush. Good stuff, man.
You appreciate it.
All right, Garrett Bush. Make sure you check him out. Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show Monday through Friday, 11 to 1. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Casey Kinnamon up ahead. We're still talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games await for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Josh Norris, Director of Content at Underdog Sports, talking about Deshaun Watson and the Browns offense in 2026.
Can he get back again to average play that you can win with him play? Because I don't think you're ever going to get back to you win because of Deshaun Watson anymore. But what I really like is that, again, Todd Monken with these personnel groupings, he can dictate things out there. And while he doesn't have as many tight ends at his disposal as he did with the Baltimore Ravens and fullbacks and everything involved there, I do want to just bring up Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston because those are two of my favorite wide receivers in this entire class.
Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and Barking Browns podcast. Casey, again, who knows about the quarterback? We'll see how that plays out. I would disagree. With the tight ends that you drafted, and they're not high profile, but they are different skill sets. He's gonna seek out weak links on the defense. That's when I think of Todd Monken's offense. That's what I think of.
Yeah, and you would start that with Harold Fandon Jr., a guy that you can move around to find mismatches. He's a mismatch seeker. And for a creative play caller, he's the ultimate trump card because you can literally put him anywhere in a formation. You could motion him out of the backfield, put him in the slot, put him at standard tight end, just kind of let him operate. And that's something that if you were to look at what he was successful with in Baltimore with Isaiah Likely, he has that times two in Harold Fandon. So I think that's something they can lean into. And then also, I do think they will find a fullback. He likes to use a fullback, and they've signed some guys to their roster, intriguing options to use in that kind of spot. So I definitely think you'll see a lot of those staples, at least starting off, because that is a good blanket for a quarterback, just something comfortable that you can put him in that 12 personnel and even 13 personnel. So I do think you'll see a lot of that carry over from Baltimore for Todd Monken.
Let's talk about the quarterback room. And I know you've kind of talked about this on the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Expected to be a loaded quarterback class in the draft in 2027. They said the same thing this year, and it didn't work out. And again, who knows? When you look at the Browns, I got to believe Andrew Berry and Todd Monken, to some extent, would love for it to be Shedeur Sanders. Todd Monken has to win.
Yeah, and we've talked about this too. You can't lie to the players. So as much as I do not want it to be Deshaun Watson, if he wins the competition, he wins the competition. Todd Monken can't tell the players that it's sunny outside when it's raining. If they see that he wins it, that's got to be the quarterback. But if it's anywhere near even, you have to go with the young guy to see what you have in him, because what you have on the horizon in 27, and also that being that Deshaun Watson's not going to be on this roster past June 1st. It is the way it's going to work out next year. So if Watson wins it, he wins it, and then you let the chips fall where they may. But if it's even, you have to go with your young guys. It's just the way that this is going to play out in 2026. And the best thing that could possibly happen is Shedeur win it outright, takes the reins, is clearly the guy, and it's not even. But a lot has to play out between now and then. We're not even to mandatory minicamp. So I think that's when the real conversations start to happen, right? June 9th to June 11th, they're going to be mandatory minicamp. Whenever that breaks at the end of the 11th, we'll have an idea of who is going to start the season. Now, start for the entire season, I highly doubt it. I think you'll still see some movement in that, regardless of who it is, just because of injury. And it's a long season, but we have to be patient and let this thing play out and not jump to conclusions here, in the beginning of May.
Yeah, and the other thing is the line appears to be better. The wide receivers appear to be better. And by default, whomever the quarterback is should be better. So longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi with his thoughts on, do the Browns have a chance of making the playoffs this year after the schedule release?
Tony, if we're talking just the idea of making the postseason, not necessarily winning the division, although we all know that's what you would rather do, 10 weeks before the bye, their record for you to say, okay, they're still in it, needs to be at least what?
At least 5-5.
At least
you
5-5.
could sneak into a wild card at 9-8, but a lot of things have to happen for that to be. So 10 wins would be safe. I think that's a stretch based on the schedule, but who knows? Anything can happen.
And Casey, again, you can make a case. We don't even know who the quarterback is of the Steelers, a division rival, yet at this point in time. I mean, you're assuming it's Aaron Rodgers, but we'll see. And injuries will pile up and those kind of things. They have more talent on this roster. I mean, that's the bottom line is they have more talent on the offensive side of the ball, and as much, if not more, on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and a whole new schematic coming in on offense. So you expect that just to raise the level by itself. And if you get competent offense, we don't even have to shoot for the moon here. Competent offense, if this defense can just maintain, and you're looking at a recipe where 500 has got to be in the ballpark. And I do agree with Tony. If you get to the bye at 5-5, you have a shot in this thing, because right on the other side of the bye, you have 3 home games right in a row against winnable teams too. So it is set up for them. If they can just tread water through the first part of this schedule, they can really hit their stride. And I expect this team to get better throughout the year. I do expect there to be some rough patches on the offensive side of the ball, just because it's so many new players. Even though that is an increase in talent, you put all 5 new offensive players on the offensive line, there's going to be some struggles in continuity. They have to learn how to play together and gel. The quicker they do that, the quicker this thing gets off the ground. But there could be some rough patches. 5-5 at the bye sounds fine by me. If you can get to that, if you told me that I could have that today, I would take it.
The other thing is you look at this roster, and there isn't the best. Some of the best quarterbacks are in the division. You're going to play them anyway. It's not like you're looking at the quarterbacks you were looking at last year.
Yeah, it's. We always do this because the strength of schedule is one thing, but that's who the team was the year before. That might mean something in the first few weeks, but by the time we get 5-6 weeks into this, each team is going to form their new identity for the season. But this is definitely a more advantageous schedule from the quarterbacks you're facing perspective, which is the biggest indicator of wins and losses outside of turnovers is the signal callers you face on a week-to-week basis. Now, as we sit here today, because we don't know who ours is, it's impossible to say that you have an advantage in that way. But you know your defense, and you know what your defense is capable of. So the less elite quarterbacks you face, the better. And that's the way the schedule lays out for 2026. Now, it could all change with injuries and people coming out of nowhere. But as we sit here today, you have to feel good about at least the quarterbacks you are facing this upcoming season.
What are your thoughts about Cedric Tillman? It appears Denzel Boston is somewhat redundant to what his skill set is, and Tillman's problem is he hasn't been able to stay on the field.
Yeah, and if that's just what an influx of talent will do, because we're looking at this point last year, not only was Tillman guaranteed a roster spot, he was guaranteed a prominent role as long as he could be on the field. Now we saw that he couldn't stay on the field, but now you add Denzel Boston to the mix, and all of a sudden, I still believe that Cedric Tillman will be on this roster, barring a trade or an injury. His role is going to be greatly diminished. But at the same time, because you do not have another big body X type receiver boundary guy, you're going to keep him on the roster, because asking Denzel Boston to shoulder the entire load for an entire season is too much to do, because he's a rookie. So to have someone like Cedric Tillman in reserve, coming off the bench and supplying that type of a role, as opposed to being a guy that you're relying on, I think actually suits Cedric Tillman better, and it'll lead to a greater appreciation for his skill set, because you're not banking on it. So when you get it, it'll be a welcome thing, as opposed to being like, well, we need him to do X, Y, or Z this week because you have Denzel Boston on the outside now. So it's precarious, because we had high hopes for Cedric Tillman. They did not play out. So now he's going to be in a much diminished role as a backup, but that actually might suit his skill set and his body type better.
All right. Do you think the Browns should sign Kenny Moore to be their nickel corner? That's something that's still kind of in flux.
Yeah, and I don't want this to be an indictment on Miles Harden. He was fine last year. There's a lot of room in his game for growth. He's a young guy. But I don't want to let good get in the way of great. And if you look at this league's vastly changed the importance. This is apex importance for nickel corner in this league, because of the way offenses are attacking with the slot. If you look at, JSN and his role, or Puka, and these guys that get in the slot, and the offenses actually get ran through them from that position now. And if you look at the other corners that are in the league, these slot corners that have emerged in Philadelphia with Cooper DeJean or Trent McDuffie in Kansas City or Devin Witherspoon in Seattle, it's a much more important role. And if you look at what Rutenberg tasks is out of that position in general, I am not sure that Miles Harden will be able to give him everything that he wants. Now, I know that Kenny Moore can. Kenny Moore is still a top 5 slot corner in the league, but he's also going to turn 31 in August. So this has to be here for a good time, not a long time type of thing for Kenny Moore. And Kenny Moore is going to have options. That's, like I said, the importance of that position is increased. So there's going to be other teams vying for his services. The one thing the Browns can do is sell him on the idea of, do you want to be on the best defense in the league? Because that is on the table for Cleveland this season. And to do that, though, they're going to need, an increased role from the slot corner, especially the way Rutenberg tasks that position with coming up and run defense. So if I'm looking at anything that's available, Kenny Moore is by far and away the best slot corner available in the market. The question is, do they want to do that for a year or two and maybe stunt Miles Harden growth, or do they want to go all in on Miles Harden? That's the decision that Miles Harden's play is going to dictate as these first couple camps come together.
All right. When you look at it, we continually talk about building the roster out. Are they finally at a point where this is kind of sustainable?
You said it earlier, there's a definite increased level of talent on this roster, and it's came through the draft. And if you look at the way the guys performed last year that were drafted, you see the beginning of the nucleus. Now, this has to play out this year with this draft class actually performing. But if they do, you put those two draft classes back to back, you see the nucleus of young guys that can grow together and learn to win and build, and that'd be your solid group to build off of. And then you can start to envision, eventually having to move off players like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. And right now, that seems like that'd be an utter collapse if you did that right now today. That might not feel like that in a year or two, just based on those two back-to-back classes, if they perform to the level of their capabilities. And you start to see what you could build off of and have when the stadium opens in 2029 in Brook Park, because I'm sure that's what Jimmy's looking towards right now, is that kind of the projection date to be a winning organization. And you've put the foundation in place by stacking back-to-back phenomenal rookie classes. Now, of course, they have to play like that this year for us to feel that way going forward. But I do believe it is sustainable.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. We're in Stubside. Take a quick time out. Lance Reisland, film breakdown video analysis of some of the Browns' Day 2 and Day 3 picks in this draft. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Film and breakdown, video analysis, some of the later round picks. So we're going to start with the big offensive tackle, Austin Barber. What did you see when you looked at Barber?
Well, seeing him in camp, it kind of fit what I saw on film from Florida. He is a massive human being, 39 starts at Florida. You can see here, so he's a guy that is all of 6'7", moves his feet very, very well. He's a guy that I didn't have very high on my list, but there's a bunch of guys that he was on my list from like 6 to like 20. Just got big physical guys. What I like about him is he plays high-level competition. The thing that probably moved him to where he was his hand placement. At times he'll lose his hand placement, but the things you can't teach, he can do. So like I said, you're talking about a guy 6'7", 330 pounds, 320, 330 pounds, and then you saw that at camp. And once again, like all these guys, really good feet. Really good sense of urgency in everything he does. He was fantastic with Fano and Brailsford. Just a really good football player, and a guy, because he doesn't have to play right away, he's a guy that can develop, and you never know. Once again, the thing that holds him back are his hands, and making sure his hands are in the right spot, especially when he's pass protecting. But this guy is really big, really physical, and moves his feet very, very well.
All right, so the things that he needs to correct can be corrected. You mentioned the second guy we're looking at, another offensive lineman, predominantly a center, Parker Brailsford. What did you see with him?
Well, he's a guy who's undersized. He's 290 pounds, and Andrew Berry loves those guys. But what he can do is he can get to the second level very, very well. And you watch him, he plays with great leverage. Here he's on the double team getting to the second level. So, again, unless the thing that he'll struggle with is that in the NFL, what I think guys will do is put a nose on him and put those big 330, 40, 50-pounders on him. Besides that, you can see he's very physical. He plays with great leverage. He understands the game of football, so he understands the fronts and coverages. And then, obviously, right there, you like his toughness. And if he needs help, he can get help with the guards on the double team. So the thing that he does very well is he runs the show. He's very physical. He plays with great leverage, and he moves. Again, the overlying theme of this entire class. Versatile guys who can do different things, but they all move very well. That was the overlying theme for me. You can see him blocked back there on the 2-eye inside the guard, and just really physical. Played at Alabama. Again, you play really good competition week in and week out. Like I said, he'll have to add a little bit of weight because NFL teams will cover him, but I expect this guy to be fully in the mix for that starting center job, which allows you to move different guys around, again, playing your best 5 or 6 linemen at all times.
And the movement skills, that's something to be that seems to be a common thread with what they were looking for.
Yeah, he can get to the second level on double teams in zone, and then they can pull him. So if you get a guard who has an outside technique, to him, the center can pull instead of the guard, which makes it much easier on the center and much easier on the guard. So a guard that can pull on counter, power, pin and pull. Basically get to that next level. Not only block the line of scrimmage, but get to those linebackers, get to those strong safeties, get to those nickelbacks. He can do that. He's got great feet in a small area. Really liked him watching him in camp. Again, they all kind of fit that mold where they were just really light on your feet and excited to be at camp. So the film matched.
So the next guy we're going to talk about, one of his teammates at Alabama, linebacker Justin Jefferson. What did you see with Jefferson?
Well, there's a lot of similarities in skill set. So he's just a guy who is at camp. He's undersized. You can see that he's undersized, but you can see there his ability to close on things, his ability to run. You'll see him here on the swing pass. This is what he does very, very well. And if you think about what he's going to do in the Browns defense, this is another guy which is kind of exciting for me because the Browns are going to stick to this pressure front. And in a pressure front, these linebackers need to clean up. Now, he's not a guy that can stack and shed. And what I mean by that is that at all levels of football, when that offensive lineman comes out at you, you have to meet him head on, basically hit him in the face and get rid of him. And, the term they use is stack and shed. That's not his strength, but it wasn't JOK's strength either. But he'll give you some JOK kind of vibes. Now, I'm not saying he's JOK, but undersized, really light on his feet, explosive, can blitz very well, can play in space, clean up very well. I think he's a perfect addition. He can play the nickel. He can play the inside linebacker in the nickel. He can play outside. He can do a lot of different things. He blitzes very well. Obviously, you just got to keep his jersey clean because he's, under 200, he's around 210, 215 pounds, but really good active player, really good athlete, and a perfect addition to this Browns scheme.
All right, so the next guy we're going to take a look at, offensive side of the ball, tight end, Joe Royer from the University of Cincinnati. What'd you see with Royer?
Well, I loved him at camp. Everything, both the tight ends they picked up kind of fit the mold. So Royer's a guy, multiple positions, can play inline, outline, but he's more of a Harold Fannin. He's not a guy who's going to physically knock you off the ball. So, kind of the idea of where he came from is kind of interesting because he has a lot of Kelsey traits, meaning he'll block in space, he'll block on the line of scrimmage if you need him to, but that's not his calling card. His calling card is in the slot and blocking down and being a guy who can block in space, for example, there, and then he slips into the seam. But he's a really good run after catch guy, and he kind of fits the mold as Fannin, where he can do enough and he'll get better at it. But another guy at camp that I really like. So he's a guy that, with Fannin in 12 personnel, really caused some matchup problems for linebackers and safeties. Now, he's not a guy that physically can do all the blocking yet, but he's a willing blocker. He's just got to get a little bit stronger. But once again, with Monken, it's not about what you can't do. It's what you can do. And what this guy can do is beat linebackers and safeties in space. That's what got him to the NFL, and that's what Monken will focus on. So love this guy. Love watching him at camp. So savvy in his route running. Runs routes like a veteran tight end. Excited to see him play.
All right, the next guy that we're going to talk about is quarterback, Taylon Green. Unbelievable athlete. What did you see with Green?
Well, everything I saw on film is everything I saw at camp. So he's an electric talent. He's a guy that's really good with his feet. This is where he's best, on the move, on the run. Made a couple really nice throws at KC Concepcion this week in camp. From the pocket, he needs a little bit of work. So he ends up using this athletic ability. And I will tell you, first and foremost, when you stand next to this kid, he is all of 6'6". I looked up at him. It was shocking how big and then how fast he is. Once he gets that big body moving, he gains so much ground. But when he gets into space, when he's running the ball, he's really, really good. Now, he has improved footwork playing for Bobby Petrino at Arkansas. It's consistency with his accuracy, and that consistency is tied to his feet. But right here in the red zone, he can help the Browns, and he can help the Browns early, in my opinion. Doesn't have to be a gadget guy, just a big body that you can use down in the red zone as another option instead of putting Junkins back there. So everything I thought about him, he's a developmental guy. His athletic traits are through the roof. He has a lot of work to do with consistency and accuracy, but he can make all the throws. He's got a live arm, and when he's on the move, he's scary, to say the least, with that size and that speed.
All right, the final guy that we're going to look at, another tight end. They doubled up on the tight ends. Carson Ryan, tight end from BYU. What did you see with him?
Love Carson Ryan, glue guy. So he's not a guy that'll show up on the stat sheet whatsoever. He's a guy that is going to line up at fullback, in the backfield, tight end. He's the tight end. He's the third tight end. He'll make everybody else better. He'll get lined up. He's a guy that will have fullback responsibilities, but he can also flex outside. He can block on the line of scrimmage, put his hand on the ground, do the dirty work, be attached to that tackle. But he's a guy that can do everything. Now, this is an old soul. This is a fullback. This is if you go back to, people who are football people and understand the Ravens, Patrick Ricard, the big fullback that for the Ravens when Monken was there. This is kind of the role that Carson Ryan is going to fill. He's got a little bit more talent in space. He's not quite the blocker as the 300-pound Ricard, but you get that idea. He's a tough guy that can do lots of things really, really well. He will pass protect. He will do everything he's asked to do. And a guy that will have impact in a football game, and often he won't have a catch. But you need those type of guys, especially down in the red zone, third down situations, play action passes, just a really good football player that is going to make this team, in my opinion, and will be the fullback that, along with Burton, the guy they just picked up, but a guy who can do a lot of things on this offense.
So it sounds like Royer and Ryan are kind of complementary. You've got the guy like Fannin and the guy that is going to be the blocker.
Yep, you got it. So when you talk about what they're going to do, you're going to talk about Fannin and Royer being in the slots. guys who are going to vertically threaten the safeties. They're going to beat linebackers in man coverage. Then you got Joe Royer, who is a fullback type, not as explosive. He can catch the ball, but more within. There's not going to be a lot of run after catch. But if you think about 13 personnel, so 13 personnel, because they're all pretty tough guy, and Carson Ryan gives you a true fullback, well, you better bring in some big personnel to stop the run. That big personnel then has to cover Royer and Fannin in space, and that's kind of what you want in this 12 and 13 personnel. One of the many things that Monken likes to do, but now they've completed that tight end room, and I think they did a great job of getting guys that complement each other.
Lance Reisland, plain dealer, cleveland.com, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Always good and insightful film breakdown, video analysis for the plain dealer and cleveland.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.